Good morning, every one of you. Welcome to Desktop Central's webinar. Before I begin, I would like to confirm if you can hear my voice and view this presentation. Please acknowledge via chat. Perfect. Thank you for your confirmation. This is Raja on behalf of Endpoint Management Solutions. Here we go. Patch Tuesday updates from ManageEngine. So after the recent attacks from WannaCry, Petya, Patch Tuesday has become one of the most significant days for every sysadmin. This is a day which people have been waiting for because they really wanted to ensure that the network is safe and secure. So here we begin. Here is our agenda for our quick 30-minute session. We are going to start with a breakdown on Microsoft's Patch Tuesday updates. Then we'll move on to critical third-party applications. And of course, not to miss out, we will discuss on the impacts and effects of missing these critical patches. Okay? And at the end of this session, we'll also defend. We'll also, explore the ways how to defend or secure your network proactively. Okay, so before I proceed, anytime during this presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to post it via chat. I have an expert panel who will be assisting your questions, who will be answering your questions every now and then. Okay, so here we begin. 449 patches. This 449 number represents to the total patches that are released and supported by Desktop Central since July, which means in the last 10 days. And let's take a closer look about Patch Tuesday updates. Microsoft has released 5 critical patches, 86, 5 critical bulletins, 86 patches, 40 updates, 84 vulnerabilities, and of course, 6 impacts which are registered so far. So we're going to examine it further. So here is a little classification for you where you can understand the impacts. So patches based on impacts. Remote code execution is top rated with 26 vulnerabilities, and elevation of privilege is again the second best with 18, and of course information disclosure followed by security feature bypass and spoofing. We also have a couple of instances where there were denial of service. So you may be wondering what these data are about. These are the number of vulnerabilities and of course the end result, the impacts that are left over due to the vulnerabilities. Okay, so we have just grouped all the vulnerabilities based on their KB number, CVE, and we have listed them here as impacts. So here is another data. We can find the details about the patches based on severity. So you can find 21 critical patches, okay, which are released for this Patch Tuesday, and of course they are followed by significant number of important patches. That is 32 number of important patches, 10 moderate patches, and 3 patches which are low at priority. Okay, so we're going to find the list of applications or operating systems which are highly affected, based on this Patch Tuesday update. We have just handpicked few of them. To make it more precise, we have pulled out the top 5. And here it goes, the ranking: Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge, Windows 10, Windows Server 2016, Microsoft Office, and here comes the third party into the top 5 list, that is Adobe Flash Player as a prominent applications or operating systems which are being affected. So let us start examining each and every application and of course discuss about the impacts that discuss about the impacts one after other. So here we begin with Internet Explorer. Before getting into more details, let us try understanding why Internet Explorer has become the top rated, critical, vulnerable application. Since most of you are aware, Internet Explorer is being a browser, usage of Internet Explorer is pretty high. Okay, so the probability for users, of course, for the attackers to target Internet Explorer is really, really high. So that is the reason Internet Explorer is top listed here, and of course the vulnerability is also explained here. So I've picked up 3 different impacts. The first one being security feature bypass. The second one is going to be remote code execution, and the last one as spoofing. So though there are 3 impacts, let me not explain everything associating with Internet Explorer. I'm going to pick security feature bypass as one of the impact, as a primary impact for Internet Explorer. So what is security feature bypass? Let's see what it is. As the term implies, a security is being breached. So browser improperly handles requests which are directed to them. Usually in Internet Explorer, several requests are posted simultaneously, and of course every request needs to be redirected appropriately to perform a simple operation. So imagine what would happen when your browser does not handle the redirection request appropriately. So this is exactly where the vulnerability comes into picture. This impacts in CORS redirection restrict violation. You may be wondering what the CORS actually talks about. When I say about CORS, it is cross-origin resource sharing. Though this might sound a little technical, let me break it down for you for easy understanding. Assume you're running a business app, your own company's app, your corporate app, and this app is launched on a website. Probably you're trying to access it using a website, or there is a portal, you have a website, and the data on the portal. Whenever we talk about a website or a web address, of course there are a lot of things that happens at the back end. There could be several style sheets that are embedded, there could be several images, whatnot, even scripts. Okay, there will be several these elements which will be at the back end to ensure a website or probably a web domain is successful. So when these scripts are shared between different domains, okay, I'm just trying to rephrase it again to make sure it is understandable. You are running a corporate app or a web portal where the data running on the data that is associated or embedded within a website is actually shared between different domains. In that case, this vulnerability becomes critical. So browsers, when they cannot handle the redirection request appropriately, this is exactly where an attacker can creep in. These attacks can actually force the website to mislead the data. They can redirect the data to any destination, be it any destination of their own choice, which means all your critical data is at risk in case if this vulnerability exists in your network. So all that you have to do is to ensure that your Internet Explorer patch is being patched and it is up to date. Okay, so this is the first example that we are discussing about. So here is the second one. Now let's move on to Microsoft's Edge. So here there are 3 impacts that we could discuss. Impacts like spoofing, security feature bypass, remote code execution. So spoofing, let's pick spoofing here for better understanding. Let us examine one impact for every single application. So when I say spoofing, I'm sure many of you should be aware of this. This is a simple tag where browsers do not handle the HTTP content appropriately. So when there is a slight glitch in this handling, attackers take advantage of this particular opportunity. Attackers can trick the user to a specially crafted website. So when attacker tries to, inject a link, they can provoke the user to click on the link. It could be through an email attachment, or probably as an invite or as an alert. They allow the user to click on any particular link, and that is where everything is initiated. So the crafted website can either spoof the contents or serve as a pivot to chain an attack. So this is not an attack completely by itself. It can even be a gateway where your vulnerability and exploits can begin. So this is again a critical vulnerability which needs to be attended immediately. In case you're running Microsoft Edge in your network, and that too for business critical needs, it is definitely a basic need for you to ensure that your machines are patched appropriately. So let's move on to the third one. It is Windows 10 and Windows Server 2016. We have a list of impacts that are listed here, starting from denial of service, remote code execution, security feature bypass, spoofing, as we already saw them, and then comes elevation of privilege. So let's take denial of service. Whenever we associate Windows 10 or Server 2016, you will know you're going to have a lot of instructions with your server machine. The very first impact here, denial of service. Windows Explorer attempts to open a non-existent file. So here, this vulnerability allows the attackers to misguide or to interpret, the appropriate communication, and Explorer now tries to open a file which does not exist. So it obviously lands up in denial of service. This is business critical because this might impact your business, your real-time data, and your users might not have access to critical applications which are associated with your everyday business. So you'll have to ensure that you keep your Windows 10 or Windows 2016, Server 2016 up to date. Denial of service. Now the next one is MS Office. So we are picking out on Microsoft's Office, and there are two impacts. The first one being elevation privilege. So remote code execution is the second one. We're going to discuss about elevation of privilege. As the name implies, elevation of privilege. User who is not authenticated to perform various operations will gain access to perform those operations, to make it more simpler. So if it is a user, the vulnerability is to a different extent. Be it an attacker, in that case, it's going to be all the more critical. So Microsoft has released this update, especially for SharePoint server access. So whenever a request is sent to Microsoft SharePoint server, the validation to authenticate the request is not handled appropriately. So when the server does not qualify authenticated request, there comes a possibility for an unauthenticated user to exploit this opportunity, either by accessing the data or by repeatedly, requesting a lot of data, repeatedly sending multiple requests so that the server's functionality is disturbed. This doesn't end here. There are even cases where unauthenticated users can run scripts in the context of an existing user. What if a user has administrative privilege? You should be wondering about the vulnerability and, of course, the probability for the glitches that might happen. Elevation of privilege is covered. Now we'll move out to Adobe Flash Player's remote code execution. Adobe Flash Player is the only third-party application that we're going to discuss today, and the impact is remote code execution. This is one of the most alarming attack that we have witnessed in the recent past. One of the most alarming impact, I could say. WannaCry, Petya, whatnot. We had a lot. Adelquist, Sambakoi, there were a lot of the vulnerabilities that shook the world by surprise using this remote code execution. So let's gain a little more insights on how it works. Whenever we talk about remote code execution, it initially starts with creeping in malicious scripts. So where do they creep in the scripts? How do they creep in scripts? Any application, any program for that matter, whenever they wanted to function, there is always a probability that they retain some data, some part of the data on a cache memory. So every single time they try to allocate a specified memory to store the data, which is called as a buffer. Assume the allocated memory on buffer is insufficient. In such occasions, by default, the application chooses to retain the data on a temporary cache or a clipboard. So this is exactly the situation where the attackers try hacking the data. In other terms, they try injecting a malicious code, okay, and that impacts in a lot of vulnerabilities. Remote code execution. And here the code could be either to corrupt the data, either the application or the program would actually start malfunctioning, or the data could be corrupted. Whatever data that you have on your memory can be corrupted, or there are situations where they can manipulate the data. They can even execute inject certain codes, which would be in form of scripts, run some scripts, which can be self-destructive. They can destruct the complete application, or they can manipulate themselves, rename themselves. Petya is one good example for remote code execution. Users use remote code attackers, they targeted remote code execution as a wonderful source to creep into a computer. Then the particular exe started renaming itself. Then the exe started multiplying itself. And of course, it didn't end there, it spread out, to affect the complete network, looking out for the vulnerable ports, and that is how it goes. So imagine if the administrator is trying to inject the code on affected computer where the user has administrative rights. In that case, the attacker gains complete control over the system, not just the system. He can either install or uninstall the programs. He can create multiple accounts with administrative privileges. So this could be one of the most alarming vulnerability which needs to be addressed as soon as possible. So these are the common attacks. These are the top 5 attacks that we have picked for today from Microsoft's Patch Tuesday. Okay, so what do we do right now? We have ManageEngine's offerings here. All you'll have to do is just to go back and start patching your computers immediately. So ManageEngine offers you 4 different product lines. One as Desktop Central, another one as desktop and mobile device management software for service providers. Third one is going to be Patch Manager Plus, an exclusively, patch management software where you can manage patches for Linux, Mac, Windows, and third-party applications. And the final one targeting facilitating customers who are currently using Microsoft SCCM. So Patch Connect Plus allows you to patch computers, that is, who are currently using SCCM. You can still go ahead and leverage SCCM to patch third-party applications. Okay, so how do you patch your computers now? Let me give you a quick walkthrough in the product. I'm just going to take you to the product right now. For the users who are attending this session, who are new to Desktop Central, this is Desktop Central's web console. Okay, this is an integrated desktop and mobile device management software. And here comes Patch Management tab. Okay, all you can do is just to create a simple automated patch deployment task. And of course, one single task. You can scan your computers periodically, identify the patches which are missing in the computers, download those patches, test them, and of course, after testing it into your test environment, approve them, and those patches which are approved can be deployed, rolled out for your entire network. So I'm just going to give you a quick walkthrough on how it works. So I'm going to show you all systems. Here you find the data on all the computers, machines which are highly vulnerable, which are vulnerable, which are healthy, and here comes the total computers that we manage. Okay, and this is how we create an automated patch deployment task. I'm going to create a task for Windows. I can create one. I can just name it. Okay, I can choose the patches that I want to deploy. In fact, when I say automated patch deployment, here the patches will be automatically scanned. I mean, the computers will be scanned, the missing patches will be identified, and of course, they'll be all set here automatically. You need not add the patches manually, it will be added automatically. And all you'll have to do is to specify a deployment policy where you can customize the deployment settings. You can specify the time interval. I'm going to create one deployment policy for you. Here we go. We allow you an option where you can customize your deployment based on your requirement. Probably you want to deploy it during a specific time interval, deploy it during a weekend, or you want to wake computers before initiating deployment. You can well go ahead and do that. And once you choose a deployment policy, everything is set. You can choose your target. We usually recommend you to deploy such configurations for the entire work group or the complete domain so that all the patches will get deployed to all the computers. Okay, you can also configure notification settings, which allows you to receive notifications periodically. Okay, so your complete patch management task is just a one-time operation when you start using products like Desktop Central, Patch Manager Plus, Patch Connect Plus, or Desktop Central for MSP. Everything that is released by Microsoft are evaluated, and of course Desktop Central qualifies the patches and they test it into their local test environment, and the patches are published for the users. So it's not just for Patch Tuesday. Every time you can feel safe and secure that your network is secure when all your computers are up to date. Okay, you can also identify the computers which miss the critical patches periodically and get them fixed as soon as possible. So these are the offerings from Desktop Central. And here we come to the end of the presentation. If you've got any questions, you can feel free to post it right now. So this 5 minutes, the last few minutes that we spend here is just to ensure that we interact and get our doubts clarified. I could see our the panel sitting next to me. They are busy answering the questions. Okay. So here we come to the end of the presentation. I should really thank you for your wonderful time. Okay. And before I conclude, I have a last piece of information. I have a last piece of information that I would like to share to you. Looks like there are too many questions, and of course, we are trying to answer every one of them. In case if any of your questions are not being answered enough, we would try our best to keep answering all your questions today. By any chance, if any questions are missed out, you will receive an email, where you will receive the recorded session as well as the questions which have been answered. So we are also running up a free endpoint management seminar. July the 18th, 20th, and 25th at Bay Area, California, Los Angeles, California, and Dallas, Texas. So feel free to walk in any day any day of your choice. You can meet our experts. You can get a lot of insights on how endpoint management solution works. And of course, at the end of this presentation, you'll also be provided with a survey. Please feel free to post your comments. You can also rate us on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 being the best. Your comments are more valuable for us. It will help us to enhance our presentations, and of course, it will help us to serve you better.